العالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So last time we ended at the Lam Qamariya and Lam Shamsiya. We said that the Lam Qamariya, the lunar lamp, is a lamp that is, when we say al-qamar, so you can hear the word, the sound of lamp. But when we say ash-shams, so the lamp is joined together with the next letter. And it depends on the letter that comes after the lamp. And it is, subhanAllah, 14 letters of the alphabet produce Lam Qamariya, and the other 14 produce the Lam Shamsiya. So last time we talked about the lunar lamp, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and so on. So we continue with the solar lamp. Here we say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You don't hear the sound of the lamp. Yawm ad-Din. Again, you don't hear the sound of the lamp. So we need to pay attention to this. It comes by nature. It comes, it's you don't have to memorize the letters, but just be aware that there are these two different ways of pronouncing the lamp. The other thing that we need to pay attention to, and these are big topics, but I'm just choosing things which apply as examples to what we are reciting. So it would be easier to grasp instead of going through the theory all at once and then we forget it. So one of the attributes or the characteristics of the letters in the Arabic language are is the what we call tafkhim, where we pronounce the letter tafkhim. Tafkhim means that you when you say something is fakh, means something is big. So tafkhim is when you pronounce the letter in full. Like, for example, we have 7 letters which have this characteristic. Kha. You don't say kha, you say kha. Full letter. Sad. You be very careful not to confuse the sad and the sin. Because if you soften the sad, it becomes sin. So when you say sad, sabr, it has to be fully pronounced. Dad, al-maghdubi alayhim, ad-dallin, also is a letter, a full letter. Then the ghin, and the ta, and the qaf, and the dha. So these are the attributes of tafkhim. Now, inshallah, we go to Surah alBaqarah. So Surah alBaqarah is the second surah in the order of the Quran, and we'll talk about the when it was revealed and so on later on. But the first thing we start with is what we call in Arabic fadl. Fadl means the virtue of Surah al-Baqarah. There are several hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ. One of these hadiths, he says, recite the Quran, for on the day of resurrection it will come as intercessor for those who recite it. You know, that's a general statement. We need to recite the Quran. And specifically, he singled out, recite the two shining ones. The two shining ones is the Surah al-Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran. Because on the day of resurrection, these two surahs, if you have recited them very often, or if you have memorized them, they will protect you on the day of judgment. The hadith says that they will come like two shades that will protect you from the hellfire or from the heat and so on. So there is a great virtue in reciting Surah al-Baqarah. The other, another hadith is the Prophet ﷺ says, again, this is general, that we recite the Quran at home so that it becomes, our homes don't become graveyards. And also he encourages us to say nafl prayer at home. You know, we say fard at the mosque and then we go and do the sunnah at home so that the home would be full of the Quran. But he says that the home that is in which the Surah al-Baqarah is recited is not allowed, you know, the shaitan is not allowed in that home. So shaitan, when he hears Surah al-Baqarah being recited in a home, then he will go away. Abu Mas'ud al-Badri said that he heard that the Prophet ﷺ say, he who recites the two ayat at the end of Surah al-Baqarah at night, they will suffice him. So one of the things that we are advised to is that before going to bed, we recite the last two verses in Surah آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته ورسله. These are, because there is hadith, there is dua in this. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. So there is dua in this, in these two verses, and the dua is protects us. And another one, on Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said that everything has a hump, everything has a top, and the hump of the Quran is Surah al-Baqarah. So there is a great fadl or a great virtue for Surah al-Baqarah. Now, as we know, the name of the surah comes from the story of the cow which has been included in the Surah al-Baqarah, and we'll talk about it when we come to it, inshallah. But as you know, the surah of the verses about the cow that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Bani Israel to slaughter, and they argued about it and so on. So that the name of the surah comes from this story. Surah al-Baqarah is the longest surah in the Quran. It has 286 verses, and it was the first surah to be revealed after Hijrah. So this is what we call a Madani surah. A Madani surah means that it has been revealed in Medina. And when we say it has been revealed in Medina, what we really mean is that the first few verses in the beginning of the surah were revealed in Medina. Because Surah al-Baqarah revelation took about maybe 10 years. It would come at times, but the first few verses in Surah al-Baqarah came in Medina after the Hijrah Mubashara. Usually when you say Madani Surah versus Makki Surah, there is main theme different in both of them. Although they would share many characteristics, but usually the Makki Surah is concerned with the Aqeedah, is concerned with establishing the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking people to believe in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this was the basis of the religion when it was revealed in Makkah. You will see that theme repeated in the Madani, what we call Madani surahs, but not as focused or emphasized as in the Makki surah. In the Madani surah, the emphasis on the tashri'ah, on the jurisprudence. And you will see from Surah alBaqarah that it speaks about the fasting, it speaks about divorce, it speaks about Hajj and so on, things that are being practiced, daily practices for Muslims. That's, I mean, although the Makki Surah also talk about zakah and prayer, but it's not as emphasized as in the Madani Surah. So this is something that I thought I mentioned. It is ijtihad from the scholars, talking about the division of the surah, or what are the main themes of the surah. And so one of the scholars, Saeed Hawa, gave us this divisions. He said that the Surah alBaqarah, consists of introduction, and then 3 parts, and then the closure. In the introduction, it talks about the believers, the hypocrites, and the disbelievers. Then in part 1, it talks about the worship and God consciousness and stories about children of Israel. And then the second part talks about the pillars of Islam, the Hajj, the fasting, and so on. And then in the third part talks about issues related to the individual, the family, and the community, like divorce issues and so on. And then finally the closure. The idea of these, these divisions, it comes mainly because many of the Orientalists read the Quran, they didn't understand what it is all about, and they said, well, Quran doesn't make any sense. It talks about something, and then it talks about another thing, and so these divisions help us to understand, but help us also to see the beauty of the Quran and the how the Quran, when you see these things, you realize that it could not have been written by a human being. There is a theme for the Quran, for the surahs, and that theme, you can see it permeates the whole surah. For example, when you look at these divisions, what you will see is that the main theme is the taqwa. And it is, in the beginning, it talks about the al-muttaqun, or al-muttaqin. Then it talks about the definition of taqwa and how you can achieve taqwa. Then it talks about the practical ways of increasing your taqwa. The fasting, the prayer, and Hajj, and so on. These are tools to increase the taqwa of the human being. And then finally, it shows how taqwa is applied in our daily life. And then it ends by talking about the believers and the belief. So when you look at this, it starts with the same topic, it ends with the same topic. The other nice thing about the thinking about the structure is when you remember in Surah Al-Fatiha it says, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Then the answer to this is in the beginning of Surah alBaqarah, because ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. So it says, you asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for huda in Surah Al-Fatiha, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing you how to get that huda from the Quran. So the Quran is all connected with each other. It is not really as they, because they didn't understand it, it's not something that made haphazard. You know, there is a very meticulous way of the another way of looking at this is, again, this is ijtihad, is someone who when you look at the first 20 verses, it talks about belief and disbelief, or faith and disbelief. Then it talks about the creation of Adam and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels, I'm going to create a human being on earth, they said, would you create somebody who will spread mischief in the land? He said, I know that what you do not know. So it is the encompassing knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can see the beginning, the first 20 verses, the beginning talks about faith and disbelief. The last couple of verses talk about the same topic in a different way, but it is the same idea. Then it talks about the encompassing knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 21 to 39. In 254 to 284, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the creation of God and his encompassing knowledge. In the third part, from 40 to 103, it talks about the story of Bani Israel and how Sayyidina Musa saved them. And then, so 178 to 253, how the prophets save people by the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the test is mentioned concerning Sayyidina Ibrahim, and here the test is mentioned concerning the Muslims. The verse which says وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ, we will test you with fear and hunger and decrease, and right? So there is a correspondence, and then the ultimate here is the Qibla, how the Qibla, and this is the only place in the whole Quran that this was mentioned here. So it is, yeah. So it is like a two ways are meeting at the top to a unique. So things like that. This has been done for several surahs, but Allahu A'lam, you know, these are, as I said, these are simply guides to help us. There might be exceptions, but that's the beauty of the Quran. Okay, so we come to Surah Al-Baqarah, and we start with the first 5 verses. The first 20 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah start talking about the believers, and then talks about the hypocrites, and talks about the disbelievers, or the believers, the disbelievers, and then the hypocrites. you can see that from the 20 verses, 5 only talk about the believers, and I think there are only 2 verses talking about the disbelievers. But the rest of the verses, which is about 13 verses, talk about the hypocrites. And that makes sense because the believers are well defined, the disbelievers are well defined, the hypocrites are not well defined. They are, you think they are with you, but they are your enemies. So the first 5 verses starts with Alif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. So this is a plan for how to get to the word, the last thing. Al-Muflihun are the successful. And when you look in the Quran, the word happy or happiness is only mentioned one time in the Quran. Happy and happiness are mentioned only one time in the Quran. And they talk about happiness in the hereafter. They don't talk about happiness in this life. The corresponding thing to happiness in this life is al-falah, success. So what you really want to do in this life is that's the ultimate goal for the believers, is to attain success, to become muflihun. Because al-muflihun will be happy in the hereafter. So, the first 3 letters that the surah starts with is Alif, Lam, Mim, and these are letters from the alphabet in Arabic. There are many interpretations or many opinions about the significance of these letters. There are a number of surahs that start with these letters. Again, one of the very interesting things about these letters is that we said that the Arabic language has 28 letters. The letters that appear in the beginning of the surahs are only 14. Exactly half the number of the surahs of the letters of the alphabet. We talked about the characteristics of or the attributes of the letters. We talked about tafkhim here, for example. There are other characteristics. If you look at the letters that start the surahs, you find that half of the letters in each category appear in the beginning of these. So it is not the whole number is half the letters, but each category of the Arabic language, half of it appear in the beginning of these surahs. As I said, there are many interpretations, but the most plausible interpretation is that this is a challenge for the Arabs, because the Arabs were very proud of their language. They would have these big meetings where they recite poetry and so on. And actually, when you look at the culture of the Arabs at that time, 2 people were admired in any tribe: the warrior and the poet. So they were very fond of their language. They thought that nobody is better than them in the language. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them that these are the letters that you use in your language, and this Quran has been composed using these letters. So bring You know, if you say that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam fabricated the Quran, as they said, or he learned it from a priest or a rabbi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you know, compose something like it. And the challenge is mentioned in the Quran with several degrees. In the first, it says, bring 10 surahs like it. And then, of course, they didn't do that. So he said, bring one surah like it. And then he said, bring several verses like it. So it is a challenge for the Arabs to write something similar to the Quran using the language that they excelled in it, and this is the most plausible or most reasonable interpretation of these letters. Wallahu a'lam. Yani, there are many secrets in the Quran, and it is a book that, you know, the secrets come, you know, as time passes, you find new information coming from the Quran, which it has, you know, nobody understood it at that time. Now the word huda is guidance, and as I said, the mention of the huda in the beginning of the surah is a response to the dua that we make in the Fatiha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are asking Allah for guidance in the Fatiha, then He gives us guidance in this book. Then it says, يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, the Arabic word yuqim, you know, you could say yusalli, meaning that to pray. But يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ is more comprehensive than yusalli, because it talks about the quality of the prayer. You know, you do it in the perfect sense, in the perfect way that you can do. It talks about the doing it on time. It talks about doing it continuously. It's not something that you do for a while and then you stop. Because aqama means as if you have built a house. So yuqimuna as-salah is important. والذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم يوقنون. And yaqeen is certainty, is certitude, is being sure that something is right. So when it says وبالآخرة هم يوقنون, it talks about the tawheed. It talks about the submission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, that He has sent us guidance, and those who follow His guidance will have their rewards at the hereafter. We will be held accountable for what we do in this life. And then al-muflihun is the end of these 5 verses, which talk about falah, success. And success, as I said, this is the falah is in this life, success is in the hereafter. The word falah, is much more richer than the word succeed, because it comes from falah al-ard, means that he prepared the land for planting, he planted, and he's growing the seeds into plants. So al-muflihun are those who, it's not that it happens accidentally, it is something that you work hard for, and with a purpose to do something, and you get it. But also you have to remember that the plant will not come out of the, you could have a very good land, you could have the first class seeds, you plant the plants, you plant the seeds, you irrigate the land, but nothing comes out. Only when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills that it comes out, then it will produce a plant. Similarly, with our deeds, we work very hard. We do whatever we are commanded to do, and we strive at what we are doing. We excel, but we know that it is only by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will get the result of what we have done. And that all of this is included in the word falah, which has been mentioned here. Any questions? Comments?
Falah is used in Urdu as well. It's used as a welfare. You know, the word falah in Urdu,
Yeah.
it means welfare. So as a society, when you succeed,
Yes.
there's the meaning. And same with the hudi. Hudi is the person who sings to the camels when they are walking,
Yes.
so that they walk in a straight path.
Exactly.
So
Guide them.
So that's the comment that came to my mind.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, some about the form of Arabic. Maybe you already know this, but just for the letters in Arabic have these signs. It's the first the dash on top of the letter is, we call it fatha. So this is ka or kaf. If it has dhamma, if it has waw on the top of it, then it is ku. And then if you have kasra, then it is ki.
And Urdu we call it zabar,
Yes.
pesh,
Yes.
and zair.
Exactly. Yeah. I used to know these, but
Well, that's okay because some of our audience have the Urdu background.
yeah. Well, actually, I used to do a class like this in Newfoundland, and all of the people there were either Pakistani or from India. So, yeah, we were together there with Brother Salim in Newfoundland. Then there is what we call tanween, and the tanween is when you have, you see this meme has two dashes on top of it. This meme has two waw on top of it, and this meme is two kasra down. And the tanween is it comes at the end of the word when you say kitabun or kitaban or kitabin. So it is important to know this because there is rules for what we call tanween and the noon. When you see a noon in the Quran, either with this sign on top of it or it has no sign, we call this noon